Today, I want to tell you a story. Well, I tell you a story all the time, but this one is not written by me. This is a genuine story written by a writer called O. Henry. And O. Henry is a very, very famous writer, and he's written some really very popular and very great stories. But this one is my favorite. It's called The Last Leaf. And I will not tell you the story myself. I have made a proper video with AI. I hope that doesn't offend your delicate sensibilities because it's made with AI, but I thought it would be much more engaging and interesting to see the video with visuals rather than just me telling you the story like a talking head, as they call it. So I'll show you the video first, and then we'll talk about that.
Imagine this, a small, cozy studio in Greenwich Village, home to two young artists, Sue and Johnsy. They were friends, dreamers, trying to make their mark in the bustling city. Life was simple, filled with paint, canvases, and the promise of tomorrow. But then winter arrived, not just with a chill, but with a cruel, invisible enemy. Pneumonia swept through the city, claiming lives and dimming spirits. Johnsy, with her delicate constitution, fell gravely ill. Her fever burned, her breath grew shallow, and her vibrant spirit began to fade. Sue, ever the loyal friend, nursed her tirelessly, but the illness held Johnsy in its relentless grip. The doctor offered little comfort. He spoke of a 1 in 10 chance, not of medicine, but of will. Johnsy, he explained, had simply given up. Her desire to live had dwindled, and without it, no treatment could truly succeed. From her bed, Johnsy could see an old ivy vine clinging to the brick wall outside her window. Its leaves, once green and plentiful, were now falling one by one, stripped away by the harsh autumn winds. She watched them, day after day, with a morbid fascination. "When the last leaf falls," she whispered to Sue, her voice barely audible, "I will go too." It was a strange, desperate delusion, but it held her captive. Sue tried to reason with her, to distract her with stories and sketches. She talked of spring, of new beginnings, of the masterpieces Johnsy still had to paint. But Johnsy's eyes remained fixed on the window, counting the dwindling leaves, her hope fading with each one that detached itself from the vine. Sue's heart ached with helplessness. She knew Johnsy's life hung by a thread that seemed to be tied to those fragile leaves. How could she fight such a powerful, self-imposed prophecy? Downstairs lived an old painter named Behrman. He was a gruff, cynical man, a failure in his own eyes, who had always dreamed of painting a masterpiece. For 40 years he'd talked about it, but the canvas remained blank. Sue went to him, seeking solace and a model for her own painting. She poured out her worries about Johnsy, about the doctor's words, and about the absurd belief in the last leaf. Behrman listened, his bushy eyebrows furrowed. He scoffed at Johnsy's foolishness, calling it nonsense. Yet, beneath his rough exterior, a flicker of concern ignited. He agreed to pose for Sue, his eyes holding a depth of unspoken understanding. He was a man who understood despair, but perhaps also the quiet strength needed to fight it. He knew what it felt like to have a dream, even if it remained unfulfilled. That night, a fierce storm raged. The wind howled like a banshee, rattling the windows and tearing at everything in its path. Rain lashed down, turning the streets into rivers. It was a night that seemed to mirror Johnsy's internal struggle. Sue huddled by Johnsy's bedside, listening to the tempest outside. She knew Johnsy was listening too, waiting for the inevitable. The wind seemed determined to strip the last vestiges of life from the world and from Johnsy's hope. Every gust felt like a hammer blow against the fragile ivy vine. Sue prayed, silently, desperately, for a miracle. She knew that if that last leaf fell, Johnsy would surely follow. The night stretched on, long and terrifying. Sleep was impossible, replaced by a gnawing anxiety. The world outside was a maelstrom, and inside, a life hung precariously in the balance. When morning finally broke, the storm had passed, leaving behind a world washed clean but still cold. Johnsy, her eyes wide with a strange mix of fear and resignation, asked Sue to pull up the shade. Sue hesitated, her heart pounding. She dreaded what she would see. But Johnsy insisted, her voice weak but firm. Slowly, Sue lifted the shade, bracing herself for the sight of a bare wall. But there it was. Clinging stubbornly to the brick wall, against all odds, was a single ivy leaf. It was dark green, with serrated edges, looking as if it had just sprouted. It defied the storm, the wind, and Johnsy's grim prophecy. Johnsy stared at it, her breath catching in her throat. A tiny spark, a flicker of something long absent, ignited in her eyes. The leaf had held on, it had refused to fall. Seeing that persistent leaf, something shifted within Johnsy. A profound sense of shame washed over her. She realized how foolish she had been, how selfish to want to die. The leaf, so small and vulnerable, had shown more strength than she had. "I've been a bad girl, Sue," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "Something made that last leaf stay there to show me how wicked I was." Her will to live, once extinguished, began to rekindle. From that moment, Johnsy's condition began to improve. Her fever broke, her appetite returned, and the color slowly seeped back into her cheeks. The doctor, visiting again, was astonished by her recovery. He spoke of the power of the mind, of the sudden, inexplicable turnarounds he sometimes witnessed. Johnsy was on the mend, pulled back from the brink by a single defiant leaf. Days later, Sue came to Johnsy's bedside, her eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and profound admiration. She had news that would forever change how Johnsy saw that last leaf. "Mr. Behrman died today," Sue said softly. "He caught pneumonia. He was out in that terrible storm the night the last leaf fell." Johnsy listened, confused, her brow furrowed. Sue continued, her voice thick with emotion. "They found his clothes wet through, and a ladder and a lantern, and on his pallet a mixture of green and yellow paints." "Look at that leaf, Johnsy," Sue urged, pointing to the window. "Didn't you ever wonder why it never fluttered or moved when the wind blew? It was Behrman's masterpiece. He painted it there, that night, to save your life." Behrman, the old failed artist, had finally painted his masterpiece. Not on a canvas for critics to admire, but on a cold brick wall, for one young woman to see and find her will to live. He had given his life for it. His gruff exterior had hidden a heart of immense compassion and courage. He had scoffed at Johnsy's delusion, yet he had understood the desperate need for hope, for something to cling to. And so, the last leaf became more than just a painted image. It became a symbol of selfless love, of the profound impact one life can have on another, and of the enduring power of hope, even in the darkest of times. It reminds us that sometimes the greatest acts of kindness are unseen, painted in the quiet moments of sacrifice, leaving behind a legacy that inspires us to hold on, just like that last defiant leaf.
I hope you like this story. It is it's got a bittersweet ending, but O. Henry was kind of like a master of bittersweet endings, sometimes very melancholy endings as well. But this story has so much to teach us that we can apply to our own lives, and I want to talk about that at length. So I'll take another episode to talk about the lessons from this story. For now, just finish here. I'll just say thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.